Hey, Sister Kate here on Shofar Mountain. See some ridgeline behind me here and a little twig in front because this tree is holding my selfie stick for me so I can do a video for you this morning. And this particular video, kind of serious. Other people have done these videos. Cold coffee here. Other people have done these videos. And everyone has their opinion, which is awesome. Mine is going to be kind of from a historical perspective, because that's how I see this movement, this belief movement, this faith movement that we are in. I have a historical perspective on it because I've been alive now almost 60 years, and I've seen my progression through my belief systems in our country, and I've also seen the country itself go through. And mine started in the Catholic Church where I was born and baptized and everything, and went through all the different phases of belief, from just no faith being applied except for what the Catholic Church taught me about, right and wrong and God exists and so on, through agnosticism, and then baby steps in Christianity, and then to a pastor's wife, to finding Torah. So it was a long journey. And then once we came to the, seeing Torah, we thought, oh, wow, it's new. We're brand new to this. Well, we were brand new to it, but Torah believers had been around for a while, starting with the apostles, of course. And what made the apostles different from everyone else in their time was when Yeshua came, they believed Yeshua was the Messiah. Now, I know you guys are going to find this a little difficult to, it's a different paradigm, but he was not the only Messiah to have showed up proclaiming to be the Messiah. And the Pharisees and Sadducees had the job of sorting that out. Is this really him or isn't it? And that's why in a lot of the New Testament, you see them questioning him. They're asking him questions that would test his knowledge of the Torah, but also the Talmud, because they had that. The Babylonian Talmud came with them out of Babylon. And so they had their rules, and then, loosely some of the things that they ask him are also based on the Bible, on Genesis, on the teachings of his father. And that's why he relates different, he answers the questions in different ways, and he talks about his father and how his father sent him, and he doesn't know anything except for what the father told him to. He's establishing his bona fides, and they're the ones trying to establish that too. And in the end, that's why they're astounded so many times by his answers. Who could this be? But they don't want to lose their power base. They don't want to lose their positions of authority. And he's the one who's chastising them because they are enforcing their rules, the Talmud, of the elders, more than his father's rules. And that's why he's so angry with them in Matthew 23. So then you fast forward to us. Religion goes through its many, many different forms. The Catholic Church establishes itself. There's always some small remnant of Messianic believers in Judaism who say, yeah, that was the Messiah, and they stick, and people run into them and they talk to other people. The Seventh-day Adventists, pretty much through their history, think Torah still applies, and so they're a small remnant keeping parts of Torah. And then in the late 60s, another group called, I think, Church of God, something like that. You can research it. And also possibly the Way. They were Baptist first, and then their preacher comes to the truth, and so they have a congregation, and it's fairly large, that follows Torah. And they're in the north. They're in Michigan or Minnesota or something. And then their leader dies, and his son takes over that church, and he goes back to being Baptist. And the people who were following Torah then, they kind of split. They move out, and two of them wound up in our area. So we met them when we got here. And they told us about that church and how they'd been in it since the late 60s. So there's an unbroken chain. Well, now you get to us. And I mean us as the greater us, not just Pastor and I, us. People who are reading the Word, a lot of times it's what we call hardcore Christians, very dedicated Christians who are searching for the truth and the Father brings it to them. And he brings it to them through 3 routes normally. Sabbath, the food, and the feasts. People research that, they see the truth of it, they see that their Christian church is teaching them traditions of men, and then they, they're kind of lost. They're like those lost sheep wandering around, looking for other sheep so they can form, a herd. And that's kind of where we come in. We're part of that movement of sheep all searching each other out and touching bases and saying, hey, does this look like the truth to you, so on. And part of that whole big picture are the black Hebrew Israelites who are in, more than one big city, but generally like New York City and DC and so on. And you see videos of them and news stories of them standing on street corners, some of them wearing some kind of uniform. This is a Hebrew Israelite uniform, kind of, a marker, an identifier, a t-shirt. A lot of channels and ministries now have their own t-shirts and so on. And they're preaching the gospel out loud, and they're trying to get people to talk to them, to get a dialogue, which is nothing new. Christians have been doing it for years. There's a Canadian guy called the Watchman up in Canada who's doing that thing now, and they're trying to reach out, and they're trying to bring truth to other people. And so, generally speaking, we are all in the same family of people who believe in Torah. And that is what the Bible says. We are not in family with, say, Wiccans or Buddhists. If you look at Leviticus 19:18, the context of your family and your neighbors is people who believe like you do. Now, in the good old days, tribe meant you were of that bloodline, that family bloodline. You were one of the 12 tribes of Israel. This is in a biblical context. I'm not talking about I'm from the Irish tribe. Okay? When you believe in Yahweh and follow his way, you become part of Israel. And not the country, that family. So, there are still, even Jesus talks to the Jews who try to claim like we are the seed of Abraham. That's their excuse for their behavior. And he says, my father can make, the bloodline of Abraham. I'm not quoting it exactly from these stones. So your bloodline doesn't matter as much as your beliefs. And so we are family. Those are your neighbors. Love your neighbor as yourself is your family of believers. It's not every person on the planet. Now, I'm not saying, because some people mistake that too, that the belief in Jesus is universal or can be universal, meaning anyone who believes that Jesus is the Messiah and wants to follow Yahweh is welcomed into our family. It doesn't matter what your past was, it matters your belief, okay? That is open to anyone. But that does not mean when you're sitting there wallowing in sin, walking the wrong path, that you are automatically considered family. I mean, you as a human can consider them part of your human family, but if they are not in the faith, then they are not considered in God's family, like Israel, that family. They are his creation, so don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say, total exclusion there, absolutely not. But the Bible is very clear about his rules apply to the people following him. And then you can be one of those people if you do that, if you follow him. And 2 Corinthians, I say this over and over, and I really should get it right. 1 Corinthians 5 or 2 Corinthians 5 talks about someone who is unrepentantly sinning is to be turned over to Satan. Because Satan will humble that person way on down, and then sometimes they get the truth and they come to the light. It also talks about people living in darkness hate the light because they don't want their sin exposed. So there, I've addressed that. Now, let's go to this shooting in New Jersey. The people in New Jersey, the black Hebrew Israelites, committed murder. They shot people not related to what they were doing at the time, so they broke Torah. Whether they loved me or hated me, whether they thought white people are Esau or not, when they're keeping Torah, we are a family. When they unrepentantly reject Torah then they are turned over to Satan. That's what the Bible says. And I have no authority. I'm not saying I'm a judge and I get to pronounce a sentence on them. I don't. I'm simply saying the Bible also says in John to judge righteous judgment, and righteous judgment is always based on God's rules. That's what all that righteousness is. People say keeping faith in Yeshua makes you righteous, but keeping faith in Yeshua is not just that butterfly, flittery love that, the modern belief system talks about. He says, if you love me, keep my commandments. That's in the Word. So if you're keeping his commandments, you're walking with him, your righteous walk is based on Torah, his rules. And these guys committed murder. It's just the plain truth of it. So they are turned over to Satan. That leaves us, the whole body of believers, still in family with the rest of the other believers. The Hebrew Israelites, the Torah observant, the Hebrew roots people, the Netzorim, all of those people are still our relatives. And we are to consider them our neighbors. And we have more in common with them than we do with the general public. But that leaves us in a conundrum like the Muslims, because the Muslim religion, when practiced by certain people, is not violent. It rules what they're doing. But they do have extreme arms of it, and you and I know that. And those extreme arms of it are breaking their own rules, and they're breaking our rules. It's not okay to kill people. And the Quran promises them, a place in heaven, blah, blah, blah. You know all that. But politically, that puts us parallel to them. The news media can then say, oh, well, they're just like the other guys. Where in our walk, we are nowhere commanded to, murder people to bring them to our belief system. That is nowhere in the Word. Render under Caesar what is Caesar's. So we are to obey the laws that are in our country. We are to drive the speed limit and pay our taxes and be good servants in order that other people see us and wonder why we're such good servants. So it's really important politically to see how the media treats this one situation and also how the other brethren respond to it. Because and I'm not saying this would happen. We can just call it whatever name we want to call it. The blue wing of the Israelite family, if they suddenly decide the best way to live this faith out is to start pillaging and plundering cities, one, we have to utterly reject that. Obviously, we should rebuke them if we're close enough to them. Because if we don't rebuke them, then their sins are on us. We have to let them know if we're close enough. Because I don't personally know any myself. If there was some in the area, I would certainly want to go talk to them one-on-one, like the Bible says we should, and say, hey, brother, I think you're going down the wrong path here. Let's look at the Word together. Or sister, let's look at the Word together and let me show you where it says, you shall not commit murder. And then once I've rebuked you and said, hey, you need to get out of that, then their sins is on their head. So it's really, really important right now, this moment, what is going to happen with this in the news and the social media and everything else. And to realize you could get pulled in. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not making predictions or anything else like that. But as an internet presence, a tiny one, I see that also, I'm part of the Israelite family. In no way do I condone that kind of behavior. I don't believe that is the way anyone brings anyone to faith. By the end of a machete or however you do it, your faith must come from belief in the deity that you're looking at, and in our case, the only one, Yahweh. And then your walk needs to be in accordance and with the way he teaches and the instructions he gives us. And once you go out of those boundaries, no, you're not really following him. That's why you get turned over to Satan and why your brethren who love you should talk to you about that and try to bring you back in. My opinion only. Please check this stuff in the Bible yourself. Look up thou shalt not kill. Look up rebuking a brother. Look up judging righteous judgment. The judgment you are not to judge on another person is something that you are guilty of yourself. So I cannot pass judgment on someone who smokes cigarettes, and that's not a sin. Okay, we're talking about Torah sinning, but I'm drawing a parallel there. I cannot pass judgment on someone who's a thief if I'm a thief. I can't do that, because I will be judged by the same rules. So if I'm condemning that person for being a thief, I'm condemning myself. But if I see someone committing adultery and I'm not an adulterer, I can say that's adultery and go talk to that brother and say, hey, you're committing adultery. My opinion, I think you should stop. You need to get yourself right. You need to get yourself back on the path. So check all this out yourself. Find the verses about Israel and who they are. It's in Romans 11. I mentioned John, I mentioned Corinthians. Take a peek for yourself. But this is an important thing in our movement, and you should keep your eye on it and be aware of how it's going to reflect on you. All right, bless you all. Shalom.